I don't know if I'm live or not. Sorry if I am and I'm not saying anything interesting yet. There we go. Should be live now. Good morning, everyone. I'm sorry for the little delay, but hopefully you can see me and you can hear me, and I should be able to see your comments. So if someone could type a comment, just say hello and tell me if things are working okay or not. And I know there's a slight delay between what I'm telling you and what you're hearing. I don't know if I'm live or not. Oh, I hear something. Sorry if I am and I'm not saying anything interesting yet. Okay, sorry for the weird echo there. Are we live? Should be. It tells me that we are. I'm going to view this on the public page just to make sure. And then we'll get started. So if someone could... I don't see any comments though, which is kind of strange. I think I'm supposed to see comments. Maybe I did not allow comments. Oh yeah, there we go. Great, excellent. There's a little delay between the comments, but here we are. Great, it's good to see everyone. We're gonna get started right away. I'm a little late, I'm sorry, but we're gonna talk about arpeggios, which is probably one of my favorite subjects because a very simple concept, but with that we can expand and go really far. And it's the type of subject that you can take and expand on your own and develop your own ideas, musical ideas with that. So I'm going to share some kind of method as to how to use these arpeggios in your playing, and then from there I want to encourage you to just develop that and try to research on your own and explore what arpeggios can offer. So first, we're going to define a little bit what arpeggios are before we get into the subject. An arpeggio is basically, you can see an arpeggio as a broken chord. So a chord is multiple notes played at the same time, and as long as you have two notes together, that's a chord. You can have two notes up to as many notes as you want, but the more notes, the less your ear is going to be able to determine what's going on musically. So there's a balance between the amount of information you're going to give to the listener, the amount of notes, and how he can relate to that. So just keep that in mind. The more dense an arpeggio is, a chord is, the less flexibility the listener is going to have as to what you're telling him. He's not really going to relate very, very well. But that's what an arpeggio is. An arpeggio is a broken chord. So there's some very standard arpeggios, very standard chords, and some very complex chords, which we'll get into later. We need to talk a little bit about chords, naming the chords. A chord is a series of notes, right, that are organized into a logical way, and that's going to give you the color. That's going to give you a certain amount of information. When you're hearing a chord, you will know if after a while if this chord is in the minor family or in the major family. And this comes with, as you're hearing them. But basically, when you hear a chord, you're being given a certain amount of information. If you're the lead player, you're hearing the chord. That chord is telling you, well, this is the type of conversation that I want you to have with me. I want you to be in a minor setting or a major setting. And then the more notes in the chord, the less options you're going to have as the player as to which scale to use. You need to communicate with the same language. When the chords are talking to you, you need to respond in the same language, the same key. So chords and arpeggios and scales are all linked together. Unless we're playing outside, which is a completely different topic, and we'll have one of those classes in a few weeks. But for now, we'll stay very much in key. We're not going to go outside. Let's talk about triads a little bit. Triads and four-note chords. But a triad is the basis on which we're gonna build our chords. So a triad basically is made of 3 notes, and you can pick any 3 note you want. That will be a triad. Maybe like this, this, and this. It's a form of triad, but we're going to use the very traditional type of triad made of the first note of the chord, the root, a third, and the fifth. Each one of these notes have a different role in the chord. The root establishes the foundation. The root is very important because it determines. Without the root, you're not going to be able to know the meaning of the other notes. The root is the foundation from which you're going to measure all the other notes. All the other notes in the chord are going to be measured according to that root. I say it all the time, but it's always good to remind ourselves that a note by itself doesn't mean anything. It's just a sound. But if that note is played in relation to something else, the root, then that note can become something like this, or this. Same note. Same notes, different meanings. So the root is important. It's gonna establish the foundation from which we're gonna measure the other notes. The role of the third. When I say the third, really the third, what that means is it's the third note in the scale. A scale has 7 notes, and it's the third note. That third can be major or minor. The role of the third is to determine I'll use an analogy, the gender of the chord of the scale. There's minor thirds and major thirds, and that's the role of the third. So if a chord is minor, it means that it has a minor third. If a chord is major, it has a major third. The fifth just gives strength to the chord or to the scale. It just gives more strength, more power. A power chord, if you've heard of that, that's a chord that is made of a root. Every chord needs a root, the foundation, and a fifth. So it's a powerful chord. It just strengthens the foundation of the chord. This is a power chord made of a root and a fifth. So that fifth just strengthens the chord. Let's sorry, cables everywhere. Let's determine how to name chords. The first element of the chord is a letter, and that's the root. So can a root be major or minor? Or no, the root's just one note. So the first letter that you have, that's the root. Okay, it's from that root that we're going to measure all the rest. So if you hear C minor major 7, even if you don't understand the rest of the chord, the minor major 7, C is the first section of the chord. C is the root. From there, you're going to measure all the other notes. Okay, how do you know if a chord is major or minor? That's the third. The third determines the gender of the chord. If a chord is major, you don't need to specify it. Just the letter of the chord means that it's major. So a C chord is a major chord. You don't need to specify to write major after that. Just the letter of the interval. It's assumed that that chord is major. So E flat, is E flat a major chord or a minor chord? It's a major chord. Okay, just assume that. Okay. So now that we established that, how do we know that a chord is minor? Well, we need to specify that, because if we just leave the root, that it's a major chord. So in order to determine that the chord is in the minor family, we need to put a little m after that. The little m is it means that it's a minor third. Okay, so if I write F little m, it's an F minor. The third is minor, and the root is F. If I just write F, it's a major chord, F major. Okay, so what if I want to have a diminished fifth, which is not very common? Well, I would need to specify that, because if the fifth is not specified, it's just understood that it's a perfect fifth. If I want to specify that the fifth is altered, different, I would need to indicate that in a chord, and I would write that at the end. So if I want to have an F with a diminished fifth, I would write F, which is assumed that it's a major, an F major, because when there's just a letter, it's assumed to be major. F, flat 5, It would be an F major with a diminished fifth. What if I wanted an F minor with a diminished fifth? How would I write that? What are some suggestions here? Can you type in your suggestions? We're starting very basic, I know, but it's important just to establish the foundation. So an F, yep. So F little m, flat 5. That F little m means that it's an F minor, and then a diminished fifth, flat 5. Great. Let's talk about 4-note chords now, and then we'll get into the practicality of the arpeggios, I promise, but this is important. Let's talk about 4-note chords. A 3-note chord typically is the root, the first note of the chord in the scale, the third, which can be minor or major, the fifth, which typically is a perfect fifth. So it's not specified in the chord unless that's altered, like a diminished fifth, flat 5, or augmented fifth, sharp 5. And then skip the next note to the seventh. And the seventh can be minor or major. This is where it's important not to get confused. If the seventh is major, we need to specify that. We need to indicate that that seventh is major. If the seventh is minor, you don't need to specify that. Just put 7. So if you just have 7, it's assumed that the seventh is minor. If you have major 7, it means that the seventh is major. So it's the opposite. Remember, for the third, if we don't indicate anything as to what kind of third we have, it means that the third is major. For the seventh, if we don't indicate anything to the seventh, it's assumed that the seventh is minor. So, by the way, I hope you're taking notes. Take notes. And if you forgot, you can always watch this video after. It's being recorded right now, and it'll be available on the same link later on. Okay, so what if let's analyze a chord. Let's say that I have a C minor 7. What does that mean? Well, the C is the root. That's the first part of the chord. The C, the foundation is a C, the root. Minor. How do I indicate that that chord is minor? Put a little m. And 7 would mean that the seventh is minor. Okay? What if I wanted to have a C minor chord on which I'm adding a major seventh? How would I indicate that? C minor chord with a major seventh. First section of the chord is the root. What is the root in C minor with a major seventh? It's C. So I would write C. C minor. The third is minor. How do I indicate that? Do I need to specify that the third is minor? Yes. If it's major, I don't do anything about it. But if it's minor, I put a little m. So C, little m. And then I want a major seventh. Do I need to indicate what kind of seventh I have? Can I just put 7? If I just put 7, it's assumed that the seventh is minor. So I need to put major 7. We good? If we're good, let's get started with arpeggios. We're going to start with triads. We're just going to look at 2 positions for each typical triads that we have. There's 3 types of triads. There's major triads, which is with a major third and a perfect fifth. Minor triads with a minor third and a perfect fifth. And then diminished triads, which is a triad with a root, a minor third, and a flat 5, a diminished fifth. 3 shapes here. I wrote these in A, but of course I could transpose that into any key I want. I just start from a different note. The first note that you encounter is the root, and so all these roots are in A. And there's 2 shapes of triads for every one of these 3 triads. These shapes, there's more than that really, but in order to, for this lesson, we'll just use 2 shapes, just to understand the construction of these. One of these shapes uses the root, so the foundation, which is A in this case, from the 5th string. And that's anything on the left column. So you have a major triad with a root on the 5th, a minor, and a diminished. On the right column, those are with the roots on the 6th string. So let's take, for instance, a major triad, an A, and we'll take the root on the 5th string. So that's the first diagram on the top left of your screen. The first note that we're playing, that's an A. That's the root, the foundation. Then we have a major third, which is different from a minor third, which would be, you see that minor third on the diagram just below, that's a minor third. But we're using a major third. And the fifth is on the next string here. And that's our triad. Here, let me move this a little bit. There we go. And then we repeat that an octave higher. Okay? That's the triad with a root on the fifth string. On the sixth string, we have root, major third, perfect fifth, and then we repeat that, root, major third, perfect fifth, and after we can add a root right here. Okay, those are two shapes. There's more, but those are two shapes we're going to use in a second to be melodic. And then these two shapes have variants right below. A variant with the root on the fifth string and a variant with the root on the sixth for the minor triads, which is exactly like the major except the third is different. So let's hear a minor triad in A with a root on the fifth string. Root, minor third, perfect fifth, root, minor third, perfect fifth. And let's hear the difference between a major triad and a minor triad. And then the last shape that we have is a diminished triad with a root, minor third, and diminished fifth. Let's hear how that sounds. Root, minor third, diminished fifth, and then an octave higher, root, minor third, and diminished fifth. It sounds a little darker. Okay, three shapes that we're going to use. Why these three shapes? Because these three shapes are found in the church modes. So for those of you who are scared about modes, it doesn't need to be scary. Modes are just scales, different scales, and they're part of the church mode family because in the early church they used these modes, so that's why they're called like that. They were actually used far before that in Greece, sorry. They use these modes. But modes are can be seen as different things. They can be seen as positions on the fretboard, and they can be seen as unique and individual scales. I like to see scales as alphabets, languages. And depending on the chords that you're playing over, you want to respect the language that is given by the chords. The chords give a certain number of information to the listener, to the lead player. These informations are going to be in terms of notes and intervals, and in order to communicate effectively with this musical bed, the chords, you need to use the right language. If you're not, you're going to sound outside, which is a different topic. You can do that, but there's a few things to respect with that. But that's not the subject here. In order to play in key, you need to use the same language. So modes can be seen as unique and individual scales, unique and individual languages. But they can also be seen as positions, and that's where a lot of players get confused. Don't get confused. Just remember that a mode is just a unique and individual scale with its own color. All right, let's talk a little bit about positions, the use of modes and positions, which is going to be useful for our lesson here. These modes, if I take the first mode, which is the Ionian mode, or the major scale, I could play that. Let's play it from G, for example. And I could continue an octave higher in that position, but that's my G major scale. If I play that same exact scale, but instead of starting it from the first note, I started from the second note. Am I in the same key? Yes, absolutely. I'm playing the same exact notes. I'm just starting from the second note. And that's useful if you want to learn the whole fretboard, because if you didn't have this fretboard split into positions, it would be very hard to memorize. So that's why we just split our fretboard into sections, like that. That second section could be called the second section, right? Or position 2. But no, some smart guy decided that we'll call this the Dorian position. That's where all the confusion comes, because, well, if position 2 of the Ionian scale is the Dorian, then I'm playing in Dorian. No, you're not. You're still playing in a major key here, because the root that you should always hear, the reference point, is G. So when you're playing, you don't hear that G. But if we played over a backing track, where you would have that G all the time playing, then you would really hear that, okay, yes, I am all these notes that I'm playing, whether I'm in position 1, called the Ionian position, or position 2, which is called the Dorian position. They're all measured, these notes are all measured according to that same root, which is G. So if I'm playing the first position, or in the second position, I get the same type of feel, the same type of color, because all these notes are all attracted to the same root, which is G. Does that make sense? Okay. So we're going to try some. Sorry, you lost me for a second. We're gonna talk about these positions. The order of these positions is really important. This is where you need to take notes. I wrote it down here for you, just in case. But I wrote it in Morse code. I didn't, because I didn't have enough space, really, that's all. But I just wrote the first few letters of each mode. Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian. And I just realized that my frame is not completely framed, which is not a big deal. But let's see if I can fix that. I don't know how to. Let's not worry about that. So that's the order, and this order repeats itself over and over. In other words, after the Locrian, we go back to Ionian. It just makes a big circle. Notice that some of these modes are written in capital letters. The capital letters are the major modes, major triads. The capital, what's the other word? I've got the French word coming. Minuscule. The smaller ones, whatever. Those are the minor modes. And the Locrian, see, it's in parenthesis because that's the diminished one. There's only one diminished, and that's the Locrian. So instead of saying Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian, I could say major, because that's capital letters, minor for Dorian, minor for Phrygian, major, that's Lydian, Mixolydian, minor, and Locrian is diminished. So try to keep that order in mind. Take notes too if you want, because we're going to use that. Major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. Major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. So just remember, it starts with a major, and then there's two of the opposite ones, two minors, two majors in a row, and then a minor again. You see that the middle ones, there's 6 of them. And so the 6 that are, the 5 that are in the middle, no, that's not a good idea. Never mind. I'm trying to find good ways to memorize that. You just have to memorize it. Major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. How are you going to use that? Let's go back to our triads here. Our triads. So we said major, major. No, that's not what we said. We said major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. Major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. So that means that instead of playing by positions like that, I could replace those with triads. If we're in D, for example, and I consider D on the root, the D root on the 5th string, I could replace that D Ionian with a D major triad. What's after major? Minor. So the next note is minor. The next one is minor, then major, major again, minor, diminished. Oops, sorry. I don't use diminished very much. very embarrassing. And then major again. Okay? So that's the order. So what does that mean for us? That means that musically we can use that. Your pack comes with a few backing tracks here. Let's consider, for example, the one that's called Hard Funk in A Dorian. Let's hear the backing track. The volume's okay, I hope? So this is an A Dorian, which means that I could play A Dorian throughout the thing. So I'm in A Dorian. Is A major or minor? A is a minor mode, so I could play an A minor triad. Let's hear that A minor triad. If I consider the root on the 5th string, or the 1st string. What's after Dorian? Phrygian, which is minor, so I could play a B minor. After the Phrygian, we have a major, which is for the Lydian. And I can just continue. So I could use all these triads in the order that correspond to the modes. And I'm going to be in all the time. So I'm just making sure that I don't have any unanswered questions. I think we're good so far. Okay, so that's how you can use these modes and these arpeggios. Now, this can be very a very scholar approach, and it can sound very predictable, very Engui Malmsteen-ish when you're playing just these arpeggios, just one after the other. It's very predictable. So instead of seeing them that way, we're going to expand a little bit. I kind of like to see arpeggios as skeletons. So if you look at this chart right here, there are 7 modes, the 7 church modes in their order: Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian, or major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, and diminished. These modes, I can draw some arpeggios over each one of these modes. You can see these arpeggios as skeletons. So some of the skeletons are going to be similar to others. Major, minor, 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 minor. Those are similar. Phrygian, Dorian, Dorian, Phrygian, similar. Lydian, Mixolydian, similar arpeggios because major, major. The skeletons are similar, but what is outside of the skeleton, outside of those triads, is going to be different. That's where you're going to hear the characteristic note of these modes. But if you use the arpeggios as skeletons, as safe zones, that's going to help your improvisation. Those are good landing notes, and then you can just experiment with the notes that are inside of that. Let's take a look at these diagrams. I hope they're not too small for you. You can make your YouTube screen full screen if you need to. These are a little different than the arpeggios we previously used. They're not triads, they're 4-note arpeggios. So how do we do that? We just added a 7th. And the 7th can be major or minor. So remember, like we talked about the chords earlier. So let's look at the Ionian one. Basically, I took the first note of Ionian. They're all written in A from the same root. That's our root. That's our foundation from which all the other notes are measured. Then we have a third, which by skipping the second, we land on a major third. And remember, Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, major, minor, minor, major, because it's a major third. Then we have a perfect fifth. All of these modes, by the way, if you look at the fifth where it falls, because they're all written in A, you see that the fifth falls on the fifth string, 7th fret. All of these modes have the fifth on the fifth string, 7th fret, except for, which one? The Locrian. Locrian's fifth is on the fifth string, 6th fret, because that's the only one that's diminished mode with a flat 5. I'm sorry, I'm a little I've got a cold, so if you hear me sniffing, that's why. But so you can see some similarities between these modes. But okay, so we land on the 5th for the Ionian. The 7th here, I haven't talked about the 7th yet, is a major 7th. And so it's a more colorful arpeggio. You could fit the major triad in there. But with the 7th, so if you look at this shape, try to see if you can fit that shape on other of these modes. So we know that the Ionian is a major mode, major triad. So we know already that it's not going to work on the Dorian or Phrygian because these are minor and minor, major, minor, minor, major, Lydian. Does the Lydian have a major 7th? We know that it has a root, major 3rd, perfect 5th because major, minor, minor, major. Let's check the 7th. Does the 7th land on the same string, same fret? Yes, and in this case it's on the 4th string, 6th fret. So that means that the Ionian and the Lydian, they share the same arpeggios, the same arpeggio types. So if I just heard that arpeggio, I could be an Ionian or Lydian, which is very similar. They share 4 notes in common, more than that actually. All right, so we determined that the major 7th arpeggio can work on the Ionian and the Lydian. What about the Mixolydian? Let's look at the 7th. The 7th is a minor 7th. It doesn't land on the same fret here. It's on the 4th string, 5th fret. So that's different. What we're trying to do here, this is where I'm trying to bring us. We're trying to see which arpeggio shapes are very unique sounding. The major 7th is not very unique because it's found in 2 of these modes, Ionian and Lydian. Let's look at the next one, the one that works on the Dorian. The one that works on the Dorian, we have a root, a minor 3rd, a perfect 5th, and a minor 7th. Do we find that same shape somewhere else? So if you look, we're going to look at the minor modes, which are Dorian, Phrygian, and Aeolian. The Phrygian, if you look at the shape, the colored notes, it's the same shape. So that's the same arpeggio. And you find the same shape in the Aeolian also. So that's not a very, very typical, colorful 4-note arpeggio because the minor 7th arpeggio is found in 3 of these modes. The major 7th is found in 2, Ionian and Lydian. The minor 7th is found in 3, Dorian, Phrygian, and Aeolian. So 5 of these modes already are eliminated because within these 5, the arpeggios that we find are found in more than one of these modes. 2 are left, the Mixolydian and the Locrian. The Mixolydian is a major triad, root, major 3rd, 5th, and a minor 7th. There's nowhere else where we find that within the church modes. And same for the Locrian, which is diminished. We have a root, minor 3rd, flat 5, diminished 5, and minor 7th. So we're going to take that advantage of that, of the uniqueness of these modes, the Mixolydian and the Locrian. Let's take a look at the Mixolydian one. Let's just hear the sound of it and memorize that. All these diagrams are in your pack, by the way, so hopefully you downloaded that and you can explore some of the concepts within these within this lesson. So Mixolydian and Locrian, those are unique modes. So let's listen to the Mixolydian one. Here's how it sounds. I've got a major triad, a root, a major third, a perfect fifth, and a minor seventh. Very different than the one with the major seventh. Minor seventh. The only place we find that type of arpeggio is on the Mixolydian, the fifth degree. The Locrian is also very unique. The only place we find that type of sound, the half diminished arpeggio, let's say half diminished because diminished is really different. Diminished means that the seventh is diminished. The seventh is minor here, so it's a half diminished. Here's the sound of the Locrian arpeggio with a root, a minor third, diminished fifth, and a minor seventh, and an octave higher. So only two places where we find these unique modes: the dominant seventh, which is a major triad and a minor seventh, and the half diminished, which is a minor triad with a diminished fifth and a minor seventh. So let's hear that in context. Let's take one of the backing tracks again that is included in your pack. This time we'll take the backing track that is called Aeolian Island Groove. So Aeolian, it's an Aeolian backing track. Let's hear how that sounds. We're in E flat Aeolian. So if I play E flat minor, that's going to work fine. Let's use one of the unique arpeggios, which is Mixolydian and the Locrian. Let's pick one. Let's say that we like the sound of the Mixolydian. The idea is to play that Mixolydian arpeggio, but starting from the relative Mixolydian position from E flat. So how do we do that? It's very simple. We just play our Aeolian position, E flat, and from there, we're going to count, as we're going up, we're going to count until we reach the Mixolydian one. So let's do that together. So we're in E flat. I'm going to try to make a decent close-up. We're in E flat. Aeolian. What's after Aeolian? Locrian. That's not the one we want. However, that's a unique arpeggio, Locrian. So we might explore that after. But the first note is Aeolian. Then the second note, Locrian, Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian. After Phrygian, Lydian. And then we have Mixolydian right here. Mixolydian, which is D flat. So from the D flat, I can play my Mixolydian arpeggio. Am I still in E flat Aeolian? Yes, because the backing track tells us so. So let's try to play that relative Mixolydian one, which was D flat. It works. So let's try to combine that. I'm going to phrase a little bit in E flat Aeolian. That was my arpeggio. Okay? So I am still playing in the same key, but it's just because of the way these notes are organized and that very uniquely organized mixolydian shape, it's gonna attract your ear a little bit more, because this is the only place where you hear that type of arpeggio. If I just played the minor 7th arpeggio, you find that in Aeolian. You also find it in the Dorian, in the Phrygian. Which, these are very valid options too. These are things that you can explore, but if you wanted to explore the uniqueness of that mixolydian arpeggio, that's how you do it. Let's do the same with the other very unique arpeggio, which is the Locrian. The Locrian. So we were in E-flat Aeolian. E-flat Aeolian. After Aeolian is Locrian. So that's just 2 frets higher. Let's try that half diminished arpeggio over this backing track. I'll start phrasing in Aeolian, and then at some point I'll use that half diminished arpeggio, and we'll see how it sounds. Oops, sorry. Heard that right there? Okay, let's try that again. So, E-flat Aeolian. I can play the mixolydian or the Locrian. That's the idea. By using these arpeggios, using the fact that they follow each other on the fretboard to develop something a little bit new. That's the basis, the basic idea of how to use arpeggios all over the fretboard like that. But there's more, and this is where it becomes really interesting. We said that an arpeggio is a broken chord, basically. So a broken chord, instead of following the rule by playing these chords in order, these notes in order, root, 3rd, 5th, 7th, and so forth, why not break that order? Maybe we could do, instead of root, 3rd, 5th, we could do root, 5th, 3rd. And instead of playing that 3rd where it should be within the scale, you play it an octave higher. So if we are in A major, for example, you play the root, the 5th, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the 3rd, but an octave higher. So 1, 2, 3, not that 3rd, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, this one. So you'd play root, 5th, and 3rd, instead of. Okay? And then you can follow the order of the modes again, which, little reminder, is this one right here. So major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, half diminished. Okay, I'm sorry, I just saw this comment about, is there a mistake in the PDF file for the mixolydian diagram? Let me check. I don't think so. Oh, the major 2nd and the perfect 4th are black. Okay, there must be several mixolydian ones. I'm not looking at the right one. Can you tell me which page, please? On the PDF? And I know there's a delay, but I'll answer the question in a second. And I'll fix it if it's wrong. I'll send an updated one. Okay. I'll just continue because it takes a little while for this to come. So yeah, we're using different order for these notes of the arpeggio. Instead of root, third, fifth, we're using root, fifth, and third. We could do another way. We could do maybe fifth, third, root. That's up to you to explore. But if we follow the order of these modes, let's say that we're in C major. C major is a major triad. So root, fifth, third, followed by Dorian, which is minor, followed by minor, major, major, minor again, half diminished, and major. Eric Johnson does that all the time. But it's just triads, inversions of triads. Let me give you a close-up, and then I'll check page 10. So we'll do this in, let's do this in D. I'll just show you the shapes. D, we'll consider the fifth string as a visual reference point for the root. Fifth string, fifth fret. A major triad with the inversion would be the root. The fifth is on the next string, fourth string, seventh fret. That's a perfect fifth. And then the major third is found on the second string, seventh fret. Same fret as for the fifth. A minor triad, which would be for Dorian, Phrygian, and Aeolian, would be the same root and fifth, but the major third becomes a minor third, one fret below, so on the second string, sixth fret. So major triad and minor triad. Diminished triad would just be just like the minor one, but the fifth becomes a diminished fifth. So once more, major triad, fifth string for the root, fifth fret. The perfect fifth is on the fourth string, seventh fret. The major third is on the second string, seventh fret. This would work on Ionian, Lydian, and Mixolydian. The minor triad would be root on fifth string, fifth fret, if we're in D minor. The perfect fifth is on the fourth string, seventh fret, and the minor third is on the second string, sixth fret. That'll work on Dorian, Phrygian, and Aeolian. The Locrian one is very similar to the minor one, but this time we have a diminished fifth with the root on the fifth string, fifth fret, if we're in D. Diminished fifth, I'm playing it with the middle finger this time. I was playing the perfect fifth with the ring finger. Diminished with middle. So root, fifth string, fifth fret, diminished fifth, fourth string, sixth fret, and minor third on the second string, sixth fret. Which only works on the Locrian. Okay, so that's the idea by using these arpeggios but in inversions. Let me check page 10 really quick. And so it's for the Mixolydian. So I'm not sure what the mistake is. Oh, major second and perfect fourth. They're black? They're not black on mine. That's weird. Strange. Yeah, I don't understand. There shouldn't be a mistake here. I don't see a mistake. Oh, yes, on the octave higher. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, no, it's not a mistake. It's not a mistake. I'm just getting into this section right now. This is a little bit different. Okay. Need a little coffee here. Crush is asking a good question on the proper way to use a diminished arpeggio. Um, I'm assuming that you're talking about half diminished. Again, the difference, diminished arpeggio is not found in the church modes. A half diminished is. And a half diminished, that's what we're using here, is with a root, minor third, flat 5, minor 7th. Diminished is the same exact thing except, and besides for the 7th, which is diminished, so it's even lower than the minor 7th. Here's a half diminished. Here's a diminished. Using a diminished arpeggio is going to sound outside a little bit. And there's a lot of tricks, but I'll give you one. I'm not going to get into it too much because that's getting outside of this lesson. But if you want, whenever you have a Mixolydian groove, type of groove, instead of using the Mixolydian, you could go a half step below. So if you're in A mixo, half step below, that would be A flat. You can use your diminished arpeggio just to create tension, and then you resolve. So that's how you would use the diminished. One of the uses. But let's talk about the half diminished more. Just get a little bit more into that, which is the one that we're studying here. The half diminished, which is for the Locrian. What you see just below the Locrian is the 7th one. So if you have 1 Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian. So let's use the third backing track that we haven't used yet for a demonstration. This one is called Melodic Machine. So this is in E Aeolian, E minor. Let's find the relative Locrian to E minor. Aeolian. That's my first note, and we're right here. Next note is Locrian. In this case, I'm on the 14th fret. So I could use my half diminished from that second note. From the first note, Aeolian, that'll be a minor. Locrian, that's the half diminished. Does that make sense? Let's hear it again. And you can do that with any other modes. All right. So that's for the half diminished. We'll get more into actual diminished and playing outside later on. Let's go back to this diagram here. So far we've used triads, root, third, fifth, and 4-note arpeggios, root, third, fifth, 7th. The more notes you have in a chord or an arpeggio, the less options the lead player will have, because the informations are being given to the lead player. When you're playing a chord or a series of chords, you're actually giving informations to the lead player, as to which scale, which language to use. Let's create an arpeggio that does not give any options as to which key to play in. To do that, we're going to have to give them all the informations, all the 7 notes of the scale that we're going to use. And that's where we talked about there's a mistake on page 10, but there's none, because Instead of doing that, we're going to build an arpeggio, a 7-note arpeggio this time, using the root, this first note, the third, so we skip the second, the fifth, the seventh. The seventh, after the seventh, we have the octave, which we already played in the root, but after the octave, we have the ninth, which is the second, an octave higher. So we have the ninth, the 11th, which is the fourth higher, and the 13th, which is the sixth higher, and that gives us the 7 notes of the scale. So again, that's root, third, fifth, seventh, ninth, 11th, 13th, 7 notes. These arpeggios are going to be unique to the mode because each mode is unique, individually and unique. So let's take the first one. Just imagine that we're only playing the root and then we're skipping the next note each time until we have 7 notes. So in this case, if we're in A, the root be 6th string, 5th fret, skip the next note to the 3rd, skip the next note to the 5th, next note to the 7th, next note to the 9th, next note to the 11th, next note to the 13th, and that's what we have. 7 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Oops. I'm playing the 7 notes of the scales in an arpeggio shape. And this will, you can do that with all the other modes. That's the Dorian. So let's try that on the hard funk and A Dorian, which is included in your pack. A Dorian, so I can play that 7-note arpeggio in A Dorian. Let's hear it one after the other. So that is for the Dorian one. What's after Dorian? Phrygian. I could do the same thing with the relative Phrygian. So if I'm in A Dorian, B Phrygian is the one that I'm looking for. So I can play the first note of the Phrygian, the third, skip the next note to the 5th, skip the next note of the Phrygian to the 7th, skip the next note to the 9th, skip the next to the 11th, and skip the next to the 13th. So let's hear that in context over an A Dorian. And then we'll try to blend both of these arpeggios, the Dorian one and the Phrygian. And we'll hear how that sounds. Here's the Dorian. Here's the Phrygian. That is a little ouch, but you get the idea. And actually explore all the others. And if I want, why not use one of the unique modes, which was the Mixolydian, because Mixolydian dominant 7. That's the only place you find that type of arpeggio. In the Locrian, use these modes in a 7-note arpeggio type and see how that works. Let's take a look at the Locrian. So the relative Locrian, if we're in A Dorian, we just go up our Dorian scale until we encounter the Locrian. So let's name it together. You follow the shape of the Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian. And that's an F sharp. So I could play my Locrian arpeggio from F sharp by skipping a note each time until I have 7 notes. Let's see what we have. And just for clarity, instead of playing it here, we'll play it an octave higher to really separate the notes in relation to that root. So we'll take the Locrian shape, which is the 7th shape right here. 7th shape right there. First note, skip the next to the minor third, skip the next, skip the next. We are on the minor 7th, skip the next note, that's the minor 7th. Skip the next note, and skip the next. Let's hear how that sounds in context. Blend and match. Now remember that arpeggios are skeletons, and if you're only playing around the skeletons, your phrasing might sound a little predictable, like it did right here. The key is to blend some skeleton notes, skeleton elements, with the flesh, the notes that are not in the skeleton. So that's the idea. And then leaving spaces and all the things that make phrasing interesting. Let's try this again. This time we'll try the Aeolian Island groove, but I'll use different concepts here. This is an E flat Aeolian. I'll start by just playing an E flat Aeolian. And I'll use the arpeggio. 4-note arpeggio. Minor pentatonic, because I find that minor pentatonic within the Aeolian. Let's do the relative Locrian. So Aeolian, Locrian, and we'll use the 7-note arpeggio. And then I'm going back to pentatonic. A lot of different possibilities can be given with that. One more thing that I want to show you, and this is really cool, I think. Let's go back to the triads, right here. Let's look at the left side diagrams. Okay, triads on with a root on the fifth string. Let's look at the major. Where can the major be? The major could be Ionian, Lydian, or Mixolydian, right? All right. Well, let's say that it's Ionian. Let's look at the order again of our modes. Ionian. What is before Ionian? Before Ionian is Locrian, and before that is Aeolian, right? Ionian, it does big circle. Ionian, Locrian, Aeolian. So that means that 3 notes below is the relative Aeolian. Okay. What if it was Lydian? Well, 3 notes below is Dorian. What if it's Mixolydian? 3 notes below is Phrygian. In other words, no matter where our major triad is, 3 notes below is going to be the starting point of a minor triad. Ionian, Locrian, Aeolian. Aeolian is a minor triad. Lydian, Phrygian, Dorian. Dorian is a minor triad. Mixolydian, Lydian, Phrygian. Phrygian is a minor triad. So 3 notes below is a minor triad. Okay, let's give it a try. Let's say that we have our major triad in A. Three notes below, minor third below. Consider that our root. That's a minor seventh arpeggio. So basically, if you're in a minor context, minor seventh context, or in D, and you forgot how to play that minor triad, minor seventh triad, just consider your D a minor third above, and from that minor third you play the opposite type of triad. If you're in a minor setting, minor triad above, you start playing your major triad. If you're in F sharp minor, that's your root, F sharp, a minor third above. From that minor third above, play your major triad. If you consider that F sharp as a root, it's a minor type of arpeggio. Consider this a root, that's a major. And the other way around works too. If you're in a major context, D major 7, you forgot how to play your D major 7th arpeggio, play your major third above, from there play your minor triad. Let's use that in context. Let's say that we're in A Dorian. Is A Dorian a major or minor mode? It's a minor mode. So A, I play a minor third above, and then I play my major triad. Let's try that on A Dorian. Those are very sweepable. Okay. What if we are in, we're going to look at a relative of that. Let's do it from the Ionian, for example. Aeolian, Locrian, Ionian. Ionian is C, so I can play my C, a major third above, and my minor triad. try that. Or from the A. Okay? I hope that last part was not too confusing. Okay, we are getting to the end of what I wanted to share with you, but I still have a few minutes for questions. And for those of you who joined us in the middle, this video is being recorded right now, so you'll have access to it. Time to encode it, probably a couple hours, so you can watch this again later and take notes and make sense of all this with the pack. Make sure that you download the pack, because I tried to stick to what I wrote in it. I took a few detours, but all the diagrams are listed in there. The 7-note arpeggios are in there, the triads, and then 3 backing tracks and 3 different styles for you to practice these concepts. It's all part of the same thing, really. The chords are giving you a language that you need to respect for your improvisation. If you do that, then it's all gonna work very well together. But if you have questions, leave them in the comments. And I haven't seen much comments, so I hope I'm not missing them. Maybe people have not asked questions, and that's okay. But I hope you enjoyed this lesson. I really appreciate the fact that you're here to watch it. So if you have questions, now's the time. Just leave them. So if I had to give you a guideline, a study guideline, I would recommend first really memorizing these arpeggios, these shapes, the triads, the major triad, the minor triad, and the diminished triad, and then be aware of what makes a major triad, and so forth. So really consider that. Once you're comfortable with that, make sure that you know the order of these modes, just listed here: Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian, and that you know the arpeggios that correspond to these. The triads first: major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, and half diminished. And then the 4-note arpeggios, which are listed on your PDF files and that are here. Really memorize these two with an added 7th. Then once you have that, try to practice these in order. So Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixo, Aeolian, Locrian, and back to Ionian. And it just keeps continuing like that. And then try to explore these in context. So the full diminished asks Crush. The full diminished you hear Malmsteen doing. It's because he uses, exactly, yes. He uses a lot of harmonic minor scales, which is different from the church modes. The church modes is what we're using here, Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, but there's a whole other collection of modes, the harmonic minor and the melodic minor, which is very neoclassical, and that's what he uses a lot. So the chord progression changes a little bit. But you can borrow some elements of the harmonic minor or the melodic minor and use them in a church mode context. You can do that if you want, and that's going to sound a little bit outside. But that's exactly the idea. And usually when you use some elements of the harmonic minor or melodic minor, you use it in relation to a dominant 7th chord, a Mixolydian chord, because the Mixolydian, which is the 5 for the 5th degree, The dominant seventh is found also in the harmonic and melodic minor. And so if you borrow a scale that is based on the Mixolydian from one of these modes, it's gonna sound outside, but you're gonna have some elements that are common, the elements of the chord. Like the Phrygian dominant, for example, is borrowed from the harmonic minor scale, and it can work on a dominant seventh also. But that's another topic, which we'll probably have. As far as lessons goes, next week I won't have anything, but here's a coupon for August. If you guys are interested in backing tracks or video lessons or whatever on guitarplayback.com. Next Saturday, no lesson. I'll be out of town for a week, and then when I get back, I'll finish the new guitarplayback.com website, which I'm sorry. It's really warm outside, and who's got a cold? I have a cold. So when I get back, I'll finish the website, which all of the live lessons are going to be linked to the new guitarplayback.com. But I will prepare a new live stream like this for you guys, and we'll probably pick this up maybe the last week of August. I'm not sure yet, but we'll talk about most likely modes, church modes this time. So remember, this video is available for you on YouTube. You can watch it as many times as you want with a link. Download the content that was sent to you. If you do that, you'll get all the charts and all the diagrams and the backing tracks. And practice well, everyone. If you have questions throughout the week, feel free to send me an email. There's a contact form on my website, davidwallman.com, and I'll be happy to answer, or on Facebook, or whatever it is. And thank you very much for watching this. I will see you next time, and practice well. Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend.